It's been a month since the second South Park game has been released. I've played the game partially as yet on both Twitch and YouTube, but today I wanted to do an actual review. There are plenty of changes and even quite a bit of controversy to discuss with this game. I'm Ollamh, and welcome to the Geek Corner review. So to start with, let's talk about some of the controversies. And there are a couple major ones to discuss. This game was covered in the news heavily for 2 points: their treatment of gender and of race. Firstly, let's talk about gender. As many news sites reported, your character can be either male or female and can be cisgender or transgender. Now, most focused on the transgender characters, particularly the fact that after choosing the gender of your character, you are attacked by a group of rednecks after leaving the school. The main focus of the articles, though, were stating that the transgender character was attacked, but this happens to everyone. In my playthroughs, I chose to be, like myself, a cisgendered male. When my character left the school, he was attacked by the same rednecks, who stated that they don't take kindly to cisgendered males in their town. I feel this is important to point out, as the controversy that was reported wasn't reported honestly. They made it sound like you only get attacked if your character's transgendered, with a few questioning whether it happened to everyone or not. I didn't see anyone go back and find out what happened if they chose a cisgendered character, indicating that the research for the articles and videos was faulty. Now, the other point is the game difficulty level, which is based on skin color. The darker the skin color, the more difficult the game. Kirkman even states on this screen that it doesn't affect combat, just every other aspect of your life. This is true, to a certain point. The fact is that from what I could see, having played both a light skin color and a dark skin color, is that this doesn't actually become an issue until partway through the game. After the second night mission, the police issue a warrant for your character's arrest. At this point, anytime a dark-skinned character nears a police officer, they are chased and attacked, while a light-skinned character won't be attacked unless they strike the police first. This is an important thing to note, as most of the people who were calling for boycotts of the game were really missing the point. This is called social commentary. The fact that the darker a person's skin, the more likely they are to have a violent interaction with the police in the real world should be very evident. This is why the NFL players are kneeling during the national anthem. Not to disrespect our country, anthem, or military, as some will try and tell you, but to bring attention to this very problem. Having that problem focused on in the game isn't making fun of it, but showing that there is a problem. As far as I could see, that is really the only difference in the game's difficulty. You can still do the missions for the police department earlier in the game, but when your character is wanted by the police, the corrupt cops will actively engage a darker-skinned character in combat. Now that we have dealt with the two more controversial points of the game, let's get into the geekier side and the required comparison between this and the first game. Overall, I will say that while the Fractured Butthole is a fun game, it's not as good as the Stick of Truth for a few reasons. The first of which is there aren't as many choices. If you've played through the Stick of Truth, you know that partway through the game you have a choice. Do you side with Cartman and the humans, or Kyle and the elves? This determines who you can call on to help you in fights, to help solve puzzles, and who you fight as you wander around. This is something that is missing in the Fractured But Whole. Even when you are still firmly on the side of the Coon and Friends franchise, once you have activated the Tool Shed Buddy, you can call on him at any time after that. You can't have them in your combat party, but if you need them to solve a puzzle, no problem. That is also the start of the problem of replayability. With the Stick of Truth, you chose a class for your character, and that is what you had to work with for the entire game. In the Fractured But Whole, you start off with a single superhero archetype, but eventually you get to choose a total of 4. That is, you can choose 4 up until the later portion of the game, at which point all the powers are unlocked and available. Normally, you would have to go back and replay the game to try the different powers. But in this game, you don't really need to. You can pick and choose which powers you want to use, and once they are unlocked, you can change them between each fight. You can replay the game and try a different combination earlier on in the game, but it's very different from having a whole different class for the entire game. The fighting, as mentioned by everyone, is very different. Instead of just 2 characters, you normally have 4, and it's more of a strategy-style combat. Moving your character to certain squares relative to the enemy will make your powers more effective. This is one aspect that I appreciate above the Stick of Truth, which was more a Final Fantasy-style combat. Also, the fart powers have changed dramatically. You can't blow walls apart anymore, though you can still throw farts across the screen. Instead, your farts have more unique powers, such as reversing time, stopping time, and even cloning yourself in battle for a short period. These are just as good as the Stick of Truth, in my opinion, as they are really only as useful as the puzzles in the environment. The story is pretty on par with the Stick of Truth. The kids are playing their game and have their goals, but there's a larger overall story in the adult world. They don't get as far into the weird side of things as the first game, though. There aren't any aliens or underpants gnomes this time, but instead corrupt police, a government takeover conspiracy, and a serious drug problem plaguing South Park. This makes sense with what the game is based on and where the show has gone in recent years. In the Stick of Truth, everything was fantasy-based, and they had over a decade of stuff from the show to pull from. In the Fractured But Whole, they are focusing on the superhero movies and shows, which calls for more serious and realistic troubles. Also, in the recent episodes of the show, they focused on more real-world issues, which plays to the game's story. Ultimately, I think the game is worth playing. It is a decent follow-up to the Stick of Truth. Is it worth the $60 price tag, though? That's a really good question. I think anyone who loved the Stick of Truth will be more than willing to pay the price, but others will want to wait for a sale time. If you are worried about the controversies that have been reported, they aren't nearly as big a deal as the news articles would lead you to believe. The story is decent, but more linear than the first game. The combat might take some getting used to, but it is well done and effective. The end game is kind of confusing and, to me at least, just didn't pay off. I kind of thought it was just stupid. So what do you think about the game? Have you played it yet? And if so, how do you feel about it? If not, are you waiting for the price to come down, or does the approach to race and gender turn you away from it? I would love to know what you think, so please leave a comment down below, send us a tweet, or post a comment on our Facebook page, and let us know your thoughts on the Fractured But Whole. As always, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to press the subscribe button down below so that you can stay tuned for more from Ollamh. Productions.
If you wanna see some crazy,
Cheerio!
so lazy, then you should meet me and my friends. Even though we got
It
no
also
money,
captures the
show us
layered
our
quest,
body.
so much so that at times it's easy to forget what the original reason you were doing all this for was.
Higher iron content. So if we melt it, do it kind of like a fun dip.